The problem is this is what Ukraine has become, a total dictatorship, like Gonzalo Lira. He was talking about the truth in Ukraine, and he got killed
And he
in
was an American.
Ukraine.
An
He was an
American.
American citizen.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what they're doing to Ukrainians?
Yeah.
If he had an American passport, what happened to him? Can you
And
imagine
Joe
what's
Biden,
happened to Ukrainians?
and I'm
They're
sorry, just to
being
double down on this.
tortured. I
And
had friends
Joe
who were tortured. They were
and
put
Joe
out
Biden didn't care. And Joe
no
Biden didn't care that
because
Americans were murdered.
they were backing this because they were the ones backing this. They were financing this through USAID. They were financing all this nonsense in Ukraine. They were financing the Azov battalion. They were financing all these Nazis in Ukraine. That's why Zelensky needs to also take responsibility for this. And I hopefully Biden and his administration will be also put accountable for what they did, for what the money, where the money went, because a lot of money did not only settle down in Zelensky's pocket. More than 70% of that money that was lost was settled down in pockets of US citizens. Basically, they stole from their own people. And one of the countries that was used for stealing this money was the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah.
Let America investigate United Arab Emirates, follow the dollars through that country. That will be interesting to find out what happened next, because a lot of Zelensky's henchmen are getting financed and money laundered through the United Arab Emirates. And it's not in the news, this information. I'm just telling what I know from the
Mhm.
inside. And a lot of Americans that were supporting this war, Vindman, all these crowds were being financed and laundered to those countries in the Middle East also. So that's, I'm not saying those countries are bad or responsible. It's just that they used them. Maybe not. They even maybe did not even know why they were being used, but they were being used in a way to launder the blood money from Ukraine.
What I was looking for was okay, right here. So it was a report. I remember when it came out. It said 70% of the weapons to Ukraine were missing. Like they didn't know where they were. And the Biden administration admitted that they were not tracking the money and the weapons as they were going to Ukraine. It was like they were throwing money and weapons out of helicopters. Tucker Carlson recently pointed out that many of these weapons were being put on the black market, was being sold either in Syria, in Gaza, in Mexico, like the drug cartels, for I think he said 20 cents on the dollar. So if the weapon costs $100, they only pay in $20 for it, 20 cents on the dollar. Oh, is that true? Is that something that you're aware of, just based on your contacts inside Ukraine and the way money and weapons have been flowing into the country?
Everything is being sold out. Everything. If you can sell out a person's life, you're going to sell out bullets and weapons, and that's what they did. And they were not just selling them to Syria and to drug cartels. They were even selling them to the Russians, offering them on getting offers through the military intelligence of Ukraine and the Secret Service of Ukraine. That's
Yeah.
how bad it was, and I can tell you that I know that from a fact that they were doing this, and people were responsible for all that nonsense being happening in Ukraine with the Democratic Party. Like I said, Vindman was one of the persons who was allegedly giving Ukraine help through Poland, but he was responsible for overseeing the weapon transfers in Ukraine also. And I know that for a fact. And also, those weapons were being, I said, overseen by the military intelligence of Ukraine, together with the United States government, for selling those weapons on the side. That's what they were making money on. Not just laundering money, but making money on selling those weapons. And I can tell you that those weapons that were being sold out and the weapons that were so-called coming into Ukraine, they don't even match because officially the warehouses were supposed to be full. The warehouses, this war was also to clean up the house. It was done especially for this because they were cleaning up the warehouses because a lot of those weapons under U.S. government and former administrations were being sold off on the side, and that's why they needed this war to give away so-called Ukraine weapons by the list. One thing,
Yeah.
officially they were giving them something else, and half of that something else was being sold out to the third market. So this is what the reality was. Everybody was making money while Ukrainians and Russians were spilling blood. How bad you can get. And you're still coming out, and all these Europeans and Zelensky, and Zelensky knows everything about this. That's why I don't believe he cannot. They're going to keep him alive in the West if he even. That's why, and he understands this. That's why he needs to continue to fight because that's his life. That's his life support for him because he knows too much. He was involved too much in this, and all his crowd around him. So this is how bad it is. And this is what Trump needs to understand and investigate. And I think he understands this, how bad this system got, that this war is not just about a war of national security. This war is about money, cleaning out somebody's, cleaning out the warehouses, saying that what we had before just not to show that we were selling off these weapons before even the war. And this is from the American side. So this is how bad it is. And unfortunately, Ukraine was lured into this. Nobody listened to people like me who were talking. I was talking about this. I said for years and years and years that this should never happen. Ukraine should become sovereign and independent. Unfortunately, the coup was made for U.S. money. I was there in Maidan. I saw that money also coming in from the U.S. government. Trucks with the U.S. diplomatic plates coming in and giving away pallets with dollars and hryvnias and whatever. And there was this room stack of money in the trade unions building in the downtown area of Kiev, and that's for a fact. And that's what U.S. was backing up this whole coup. That's what U.S. told Ukraine not to touch Crimea. It was basically to get Russians involved in this deeply. And with Crimea, it was good when the Americans told us not to at least shoot because we did not lose anybody there. It was a peaceful transition. Yeah, we lost Crimea. The people voted there to become part of Russia, but Ukraine didn't spill blood. Nobody died, thank God, in that situation. And that's what they lured them in with a shiny coin. And then that's what they wanted to get Russia involved in this with Ukraine. So Ukrainians would hate Russia. They rose their pride, the hatred. It was all psychological warfare, and Ukrainians and the West was involved in this. That's why the people in the West so much listen to CNN and believe that crap, because it was
Just
psychological warfare by the
just the
money of the
nail
USAID and NED, Nuland, and all the people that are Russophobes and hate Russia, and they think they're still living in the Cold War era.
just to nail this down. You said you were there when they were bringing in pallets of money, and they were using that money and effectively to pay off the various actors on the ground in order to push the overthrow.
It was paying out for the buses, for the stage, for the fuel for the stage. Everything had to be for the groceries. Yeah, people were bringing out money on the side. That money was given away to people to pay off for their work. I personally got paid for being part of Maidan by actors of Maidan.
Wow.
And that I can also testify to. I didn't talk about this before because it was too much on my plate with the Bidens involved and everything else. But people know that I was there and I can talk about this. I was there meeting with Nuland. I was there coordinating all the international work with Pyatt. And I know how it all happened. So unfortunately, that money, there was a huge room. Not a huge room, but like a room like 40 square meters, stacked with cash right to the top. And the cash was being taken away and given away when we're needed to pay off different actors and for the stage or for the buses to bring in people to transfer them there. So everything, it was not just a gathering of people to fight democracy. It was a payout, an organized crime situation to overthrow a legitimate president at that time who did make a lot of mistakes. And that's why people actually didn't want to, that's why I didn't want to support Yanukovych at that time. But now I believe if he stayed, we would have a war. And I'm gonna be praying with my life all my life for what I did because it was a big mistake being part of that coup. I believe just came back from the West, living there for more than 10 years, and I thought I'm going to be doing something good for Ukraine. But when I saw what was happening after the coup, because I was part of the government, I came out and started my fight for the truth in 2017. And since then, I'm still fighting and people trying to destroy me, but I'm going to still tell the truth.
No, I understand. I mean, I understand the regret associated with being part of effectively a coup that led to this just chaos. Well, this is almost, I guess, like penance, this attempt to try to make up for it. No, I do get the dynamic. What was your communication with Victoria Nuland like? I mean, she looks like a pit bull. She's seems a repugnant human being. What was your feeling from her? What was your communications with her like, if you can go into it?
Yeah, we had a meeting in December of 2013 in the Hyatt in Kiev. It was Ambassador Pyatt, Yatsenyuk was there, Klitschko was there, Technibok, Ambassador Shamshur, and I. The U.S. Embassy asked me to arrange all those so-called leaders of the opposition to meet Nuland there. I arranged them to come, and we had a meeting, and there was a luncheon, but we didn't eat. For everybody, and she actually came in and started swearing on Yanukovych, Like she swears like a, I don't know, like a sailor. She's very aggressively.
She looks like it.
She,
She
she
looks like
hates everybody. She hates, but she loves herself very much, as
yeah.
most of people. But she loves herself so much that she doesn't care about anybody else, and she's ready to destroy the country from within. And so basically, she was swearing in Yanukovych that he didn't want to pick up the phone from her. But who was she? She was deputy assistant to the head of the Secretary of State, and he was the president of the country. So he doesn't have to pick up a phone from her. She's nobody to him on a level. So basically, she was very aggressive towards Yanukovych, and she was thinking about how to gather more people, how to push more aggressive moves against the acting president at that time, Yanukovych, what to do for the opposition at that time. And
wait.
she
So
said,
she was meeting with Yanukovych and working against Yanukovych.
yes, she was meeting, talking to him over the phone, trying to convince him not to act aggressively against the crowd on
Protest.
Maidan. But at the same time, she was getting talking to the opposition
Wow.
face to face, also saying that she should act more aggressively towards him. So they were playing this bad good cop situation and trying to put like the pressure on Yanukovych from the crowd,
It's
saying,
like,
"No, but
hey
we were never
Yanny,
involved."
don't respond to the
Yeah,
massive crowd that is trying to overthrow your government, and
yeah,
then go to
yeah.
the massive crowd and say, we need to overthrow this government.
Yes, that's what basically was happening. And she was saying, and I remember the fact when she said, "I want to come on Maidan and give out bread from the stage," and that's what the cookie part happened. I told her it's a bad idea because bread and Jesus, you're not Jesus, thank God, and plus it's not hygiene there to give out bread from your feet like to the people. So we're not in the Roman times. So whether something packed or hygienic, and then the ambassador Pike confirmed they supported it and said, "Oh yeah, that's what the cookie part came out." So this is what happened during that meeting in December. Very aggressive woman. I never saw a woman swear so much in my life. Even
Yeah.
people on the streets when you talk to, they're more intelligent than Nuland, and she's a very Russophobic woman. I don't know what happened to her on the Russian ship that she was in the '90s, but she hates Russia very badly. Not even in a good way, but she hates Russia, not even thinking about it. She just with all her force and body,
I,
she understands that she can make money on this, and that's what I think why she's
well, I
doing
read
this
her
also.
memoir. Apparently, a Russian peed on her when she was 6 years old, and she never forgave him.
Oh, okay, there you go. We have World War
I'm
Three
totally
because
joking. I'm sorry. I don't know if that's true. Um,
I thought you were saying the truth because I would have believed it if somebody ever said something. Wow. Now we have World War Three because somebody in her 6 years old did something to that, and
is that
but
explains
I'm
it?
saying, but she's very undiplomatic, and
Yeah.
she's smart, but she's very undiplomatic. She's very aggressive, and she hates
Russophobic.
everybody I think around her. Only she
Have
loves herself and her husband, who's making money and made money on the coup in Ukraine.
Did you meet her again before the coup took place in February?
No, I met her only in December, and I wasn't part of the security decoy with Senator McCain came. I was involved in his coming to Kiev also, and Chris Murphy, who went against me in 2020, saying that good that they sanctioned me, even though I was there when he was on the stage. So everything, all of these crowd, they don't believe what they're saying. They don't believe in Ukraine. They're only using Ukraine, and I think they even hate Ukraine. They know that Ukraine's going to lose, but they say, why not use them? They're idiots. Their government sold off. Why not use them? So that's why they hate also Russia so much because and Belarus because they're independent and sovereign. They didn't break under their rule or didn't break under their authority. And the same as Georgia. Georgia didn't break under them and say we will not fight Russia. We will not be anti-Russia. And
Actually,
they
Georgia
basically
did.
at one point didn't, but now I'm
Yeah.
saying not. Right
Yeah.
now, I'm saying about right now what is happening. At one point
Yeah.
with Saakashvili, yes, but now Georgia said no. So this is what we have today. Ukraine totally collapsed. All these guys are not going to pay a price for all what they did. Everybody is trying to become anti-Russia or trying to go this way in Europe now and build a force to undermine Trump's peace negotiations with Putin. And this is the reality. And we were talking about this for months and months and months. And I said this before to you in couple and other shows that Zelensky and the Europeans are trying to undermine Trump and his peace talks with President Putin and try to continue this war. And this is what is happening today because the globalists have no other choice. to continue this war to make more money and to cover up their crimes.
What do you think when you see liberals, either in Europe or the United States, claim we care about Ukraine, we love Ukraine, but we have to support Ukraine to the last dead Ukrainian? Like, how does that make you feel when you see these people claim not necessarily ownership, but claim as if they are backing Ukrainian interests while watching it be fundamentally destroyed? Like, it's so unrealistic. It's so bizarre.
They're hypocrites. They're hypocrites because whatever they're saying is destroying Ukraine
Doing
more
the
and
opposite.
more.
Yeah.
They could have stopped this. Johnson could have not come into Kiev and continued, and would have peace negotiations in Istanbul. There's blood on his hands, and there's blood on all those liberals' hands who want to continue this war. Because first of all, how can you fight a nuclear country and win? You cannot. That's one. That's basically just you have to understand that they believe in their own lies that Russian army is bad or it's corrupt or it's destroyed or it's still in the post World War II era that they're going in and with old tanks and the Soviet Union around. But no, it's one of the strongest armies now. And actually, it upgraded itself within the last 2 years of this war and is now much more powerful than any army in the world, having the experience of the war of the 21st century,
Yeah.
hand-in-hand combat on the ground. So their army is much, much stronger. And the liberals believe in their own lies that they can win Russia. They failed to destroy Russia and break it apart in the first 3 months of the war. And they have to understand that's why they're so angry. And then they continue this war to make money on this. And so people in Europe and over the globe will not take them out of power because as people start understanding that this war was for nothing. And it's not Afghanistan or even the Middle East where people are dying and it's a great, great tragedy. But this is a war between a nuclear nation, the largest gas and oil reserve country in the world, $75 trillion worth of resources reserved in
Right.
this country, and has a future more than anybody else in Europe and the West. And they understand that they cannot. This is a country you cannot fight with. So at the same time, they believe in their lies that they can break it apart. And that is the biggest problem. When you start believing your own lies, you start to
Yeah.
fail and you start to lose. And this is what the West, the liberals, are losing right now. That's why they lost in America, thank God. With these
Mhm.
elections and Trump came back to power, maybe he's going to make some common sense back to the world. And hopefully he will understand that this second term that he will have to do everything he can to make peace. And it's going to be one of maybe the hardest challenges in his life to do this. But he will prevail if he understands what is against him and what is the deep state against him doing in Ukraine, that he has to get them out and not let them undermine him. And the Europeans, I think within the next 5 years, will also change and have conservative government because the liberal government failed their own people, and Europe is now falling apart because of their so-called liberal ideas and agenda to continue this war in Ukraine because they believe in their own lies. And Europe is now totally in total destruction. Zero growth economics in France, zero growth economics in Germany. The leaders there are fully controlled by the globalists, and that's where we are today. The gas that they're buying from the U.S. is 3 times more expensive,
Yeah.
and as I said, now the main idea is U.S. and Russia needs to sit down on a table, make a good work for them between themselves. I've been talking about the Arctic for the last 3 4 years. That's a thing that they will hopefully agree on and work together. Latin America, they will agree and work together. I think that's Russia's ready to compromise. The problem is the warmongers don't want to compromise because they have no other choice because they're
No,
fighting
they
for their
don't.
lives now.
And they've cognitively committed to this war. I mean, like it's astonishing to me to watch these guys in a room by themselves talk about all of the things that they're going to do, even though they had no power to do it. It's bizarre. There's something that you said. You said you were told not to touch Crimea. Who told you not to touch Crimea?
The U.S. government at the time,
And who
the
was your point of
Pentagon.
contact in the U.S. government?
I was already an advisor to the first deputy prime minister of Ukraine, overseeing law enforcement and
I see.
Ukrainian intel. And we were talking to the deputy head of the Pentagon, the director of CIA, Brennan, and national security advisors within the White House and also the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, Zentas, all that crowd. We were talking to different delegations, and they gave an order to the acting so-called president at the time, Turchinov, not to fire in Crimea, and they basically tried to tell us that the green men in Crimea were now Russian military to give them more evidence that they're Russian military, even though the U.S. knew that was happening. I was in contact with the White House in February 2020, February 2014, with there was a delegation from the Ukrainian diaspora. They called me from Biden's office and said Ukraine is going to lose Crimea, and this was February 20th of 2014. And I didn't believe it at the time. The Americans knew, and they told us not to get involved. So they tried to lure this in to get Russia involved, and they used this situation to try to make a war between the civil war between Russia and Ukraine, and in Donbas, the civil war between Russians and Ukrainians, and to build up the hatred towards Russia that Russia took something from Ukraine away, even without any bullets fired.
Wait,
No
how
bullets
did
were
they
fired.
know? I'm sorry to interrupt. How did they know that Russia was going to take Crimea?
It was. We have to understand that Crimea was always a sacred place for the Russian fleet,
Oh, no, I
and there
get
was.
that. I'm just saying, how did America know in advance that Russia was going to take it?
I think you should ask the Americans this. They were. I just got a phone call from Biden's office from the diaspora that was there talking to him during the coup in Ukraine, and
That's
that's what they were told. So I don't know who knew. I think the intel was working. The U.S. intel also works. One of
yeah.
the strongest intel groups is the Americans and the Russians and the Chinese now, I think. So they are doing their job. So they know what's happening,
They knew.
and so they understood that this is going to be the next phase that Russia's going to do. They're going to try to protect their people there because there's a lot of what happened is within the last 30 years, Ukraine did nothing to invest in Crimea or in Eastern Europe or Eastern Ukraine. Ukraine elites and government in Crimea actually put it into a total almost destruction. There was no roads. The Crimea was falling apart. The hotels there, the government-owned hotels, were falling apart. You cannot have lived there. Like basically, it's all was total destruction. No investments. A lot of people holding Russian passports in that territory, and a lot of people, more than 90%, they're saying that they are Russian.
Right.
And so so this was the situation that Ukraine was becoming too. So Ukraine lost Crimea because they didn't do anything within their 30 years of independence to keep Crimea part of Ukraine. If they could have invested money, invested into politics, invested into political strategy there, invested into show that Ukraine is good, invested into roads, infrastructure, maybe people wouldn't want to leave. But
Yeah.
Ukraine didn't do anything. The same thing with Donbas. Ukraine only used Donbas to feed itself with the coal and the mineral reserves there and the gas to feed Ukraine. They didn't invest anything. Like in Donbas and Donetsk, the sewer pipe system was never updated from 1970s.
Really?
And when Ukraine became independent, they didn't know the roads were terrible, total destruction. The oligarchs were just feeding from Donbass. Nothing was done. And people saw it. People living there said, oh, so Ukraine is going to tell us what to do, which language to speak. What did they do within the 30 years of independence to make it better for us to live? We have no roads, no gas, nothing. We're basically have no sewage system which is working, no water. What like there was water, but it basically was there was problems with it time to time in a big city like Donetsk, million people living there. People think, why do we have to support this? And they're telling us what to do, and we have to support the coup. No. So people basically said, we don't want to be part of this. We see that in Russia, people are living better than us. Ukraine was one of the poorest countries. Belarus had a better life style than in Ukraine and better GDP. Russia, much better GDP. People are saying this and say, all these post-Soviet countries are living better than us. Why do we have to be going to Europe if we can live a life with our own people, and Ukraine never did anything to invest in us, and we're going to go this way. So it was Ukraine's fault for not supporting its own people. The last 30, they had a chance, they didn't, and this is why this war started. This is why the civil war started, because the Ukrainian military started to shell Ukrainians in the east because they wanted to protest, but at the same time, in Kiev, if a police officer would hit a protester who threw a rock at him with a stick,
Be
he's
shot.
gonna go to jail or shot, or he has to go and face the hog court, etc. That's crazy. But at the same, when people came out there in eastern Ukraine to say we don't want to be Ukrainianized, we want to speak Russian, they were shelled with artillery by the order of the director of CIA, Brennan. This is what the reality is today, and nobody talked about it. The West kept quiet because this is the agenda. The West needed this war to start, and
Oh,
that's what and
Andre,
Trump understands this,
they
and Vance
buried
understands this.
that story was buried. Like, meaning that wasn't something that they talked about, even when they talk about it today. It gets buried in Western media. It's astonishing the way they were able to basically silence all of this. Andre, man, thank you for this. Very informative today, and I can imagine that we have a fantastic crowd here. We hit like 700. It is fascinating because a lot of what you're saying is from personal experience. And so when you're explaining it from, I met this person. I was there when this happens. That's extraordinarily informative, and I really do appreciate it. Andrei Telizhenko, he's a Ukrainian whistleblower and former diplomat and a really good friend of the show. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jamaro. Thank you, everybody. All the best, and God bless you.
You too. Be safe. Have a good one.